Welcome into Big Fight Breakdown here on ProBox TV. Guess we have now not just a big fight, but a big card, which is hopefully the future of boxing under Turki Alalshikh. That's right, August 3rd. We'll start in with the main event, but to help me break down every single fight on the card, Jimmy Smith in studio with Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri, and of course, Showtime Sean Porter joining us via Zoom. Folks, let's start out with the main event. It's going to be a great one. Terence Crawford, GOAT status already, but taking on Israel Madrimov for his 154-pound world championship, a move up in weight class. When it comes to status, it doesn't get any higher than Terence Crawford. Paulie, when you look at this fight, Madrimov, a lot of people talk about, man, he's tough, he's good, but doesn't have the pro fights, doesn't necessarily have the experience. Is this happening a little too early, or is it a good test at 54?
I think it's a good test at 54. Also, the fact that it's happening right now also will tell you something. The guys from the East, they know how to run their careers much faster. They've got a ton of amateur experience. The only thing is in the pros, you don't have that experience that is in front of a lot of TV cameras when you're in the amateurs.
Right.
You know? So you build up this profile of being able to fight, but nobody knows you yet. So in the pros, you start to become known, but then you don't even need the fights where usually people get to know you. You can just jump right into the bigger fights because you're that good.
When you look at Terence Crawford, Chris, you and I were talking about this off camera, before we got on camera. Is he playing legacy-wise with house money? Now that he's being Errol Spence Jr., and he's probably the greatest of his generation at this weight class, you talk about the stakes. If he wins, he fights Canelo. He's already established as a GOAT. Losing to Madrimov would be incredibly disappointing, but the idea that his status at his age is already set at 36, yes or no?
To a degree, yes. No, I mean, yes, if you're talking about him in terms of vying for that Canelo Alvarez fight, absolutely. I mean, if you go up to 68 and then you end up losing to, Canelo Alvarez at the age of 36, 37, it's really not going to knock his legacy by any means. Madrimov is a little bit different. He's jumping up one weight class as the guy with only 11 fights. And it could adjust, the concept of Terence Crawford's career. Not majorly. It's not going to knock him off, knock him completely off. But no, there's definitely a risk taking the Madrimov fight. Yeah, you're in your fourth weight class. Yeah, you're 36 years old. But he's good. Madrimov can fight. He's a real champion. It's the biggest weight class he's ever been in against the biggest guy he's ever fought. So there's a lot of risks with the fight. But I mean, the way that Crawford is moving recently, they are very, very tactical. And if they saw something in Madrimov to make this fight make sense to them.
All right, Showtime, when you look at this, if you're coaching Madrimov, look at the tail of the tape. 10-0-1, of course, Terence Crawford. 40-0. The guy is absolutely fantastic. I don't need to tell you that. If you were getting Madrimov ready for this fight, tactically, how do you keep him in this fight against Crawford, who is tactically brilliant?
Yeah, some guys don't have an ability to switch up who they are, what they can do. Madrimov is the kind of fighter, he's going to be aggressive. He's going to be in your face no matter who you are. The thing I really like about Madrimov is he's not the kind of fighter that's just going to walk up to you and then punch. He knows how to move and punch at the same time, cut off the ring, and he starts with the basic, the jab. He starts that to put you in a better position for himself. I would tell him, I know this is very cliche, be yourself. We all hear that all the time. But if there was ever a time, and especially me being a trainer to Madrimov, if I could preach and pound anything into his mind, it would be under no circumstances do you switch up who you are. Be who you are. Control the ring as much as you can. Use your jab. Be ready for the defense and keep going. The only way I see Madrimov beating Terence Crawford is if he is himself and he does not waver from that. We already know Terence Crawford. He has the ability to get in everybody's head, stop them from doing what they do great, make them good, if not okay, and then he just takes over. In order for Madrimov to beat Terence Crawford, he has to remain who he is for the entirety of the fight.
All right, when you look at the step up in weight class, Paulie, how do you make that a non-factor for Terence Crawford, right? You're moving up, you're naturally the lighter guy, Madrimov naturally the bigger guy. How do you make that, as Showtime said, a non-factor fight? He's so good at taking away your advantage. The advantage might be the size in this case. How does he take that away?
How do you make the fourth weight class a non-factor?
Yeah, how do you do that tactically? Is there a way?
It's not easy. It's not easy. Crawford.
I ask the tough questions, Paulie. It's what I do, bro.
How do you? Yeah, of course, Jimmy. It's the fourth weight class, so I think there's no way it's not a factor, but you can. There's ways you go about it by limiting it as a factor. I mean, listen, I remember when Crawford fought Horn, and thinking Horn is so physical. how are you going to make the physicality of a bigger guy a non-factor against the former lightweight? You know, and I really thought Crawford was supremely more skilled than Horn. But sometimes in our past of this boxing history, we see that even the guy who's way better, if he goes up in weight and it's a physical fight, he gets physically worn down. And I couldn't see how maybe it wasn't going to become a factor, because really with Horn and Pacquiao, the physicality was a big factor in that fight, no matter who you thought won the fight. The physicality of Horn was an issue. And I thought it could be a problem for Crawford too. He's a former lightweight coming up. And then I watched the fight and he's bullying the welterweight. So do you make it? Does it become a factor? I don't know. And at that point, and Sean, I'd really like to have you jump in on this, because you're also that physical, natural welterweight as well. It was only because I'd seen that fight that when they made Sean versus Terence, I said, okay, Terence can beat Sean. Because otherwise, if I had not already seen Crawford do what he did to Horn, I was like, oh, there's no way he can deal with Sean's physicality. You know, like in my mind, Sean, I'd like to weigh in on that as well, because you were a guy who knew how to fight that way.
Yeah. So there's two things with Terence Crawford, and the number one thing is his mental fortitude. The dude is just tough as you can't even compare his toughness, his mental toughness. So that's number one. If you tell him going into the ring, he hears, oh, that guy's stronger than him, he's gonna in the ring on fight night, he instantly is going to want to show that he's stronger than the other guy. The other guy's faster, can move better. And he's gonna want to show that he's better than whatever it is anybody has said this guy could be remotely close to being better than him. And hopefully that makes sense to you guys. But the other thing, remember, go back and went after the fight with Errol Spence Jr. He was saying I had a hard time making 147 pounds. Terence Crawford, very, very smart, intellectual when it comes to training, getting ready for his fights. He's been hitting weights for years. That's the thing that people didn't know about. So as he's moved up these different weight classes, he's already strong and physically muscular. And the endurance is there. The muscular strength is already there because he's built himself up to be in the weight class he belongs in. 135, moving up to 140. He was already hitting weights. Coming to 47, he's already hitting weights. The physical adjustment we might think he might need to make at 154 is already there because he's been hitting the weights for years. What does that mean? The muscle buildup is already there for 154, which is probably why it was hard for him to make 147.
My contradiction here is going to be this, because again, you were also a guy who hit the weights, right? I mean, you were.
Yeah.
So why didn't we see you at 160, at 68? I mean, if it's the concept of that, and that's not a knock on you. I'm just trying to compare.
No.
Make comparisons here, because you were a guy who was big on weights as well. At welterweight, you were very, very strong. In the amateurs, you fought. For anybody who doesn't know, this guy fought Usyk in the amateurs. That's how big he was fighting.
Well, he fought everybody. And
yeah, through one of those, through all those weight classes. So, no, but it's not so much making it about you, Sean. But there's a comparable here. So if you were a guy who, go ahead.
Yeah, the difference is when I was 165 pounds in the amateurs, I was playing football. I was squatting 400 pounds. When I turned pro, I moved down to 47. I could no longer squat. I could no longer bench press. I could no longer do incline bench press, dumbbells, all these kinds of things. I was trying to break up my muscle to get to 47. I was trying to get there because that was the marquee division in boxing. You become a champion at 47, and that's where you make your legacy. But at the end,
you were still good enough to compete at 54, and you were hitting the
Absolutely.
weights. Did you ever consider it? Because we're talking about Crawford at 54 now. That's like the equivalent of you at least at 168.
I just felt like, and even now being 36, going on 37, there was more things that I needed to do in life, and I felt like, I'm ready to get to that.
The passion wasn't there anymore.
I just didn't want to. To me, it was like.
So Sean,
I'm
you're essentially saying it's all by design. Terrence's moving up in weights is by design. He's been using the weights. He's been using his training to
I should have gave
eventually
you
move
notes
up.
before this show, and then you could have just said.
And for you, your design was to maintain your weight and stay at 47.
Yeah.
You didn't have in your
Exactly.
mind to go up to 54 and to 60 and 68. That wasn't
Exactly.
because you were a career welterweight. You were always
Exactly.
getting yourself down.
But Sean, so what you're saying is basically you were compartmentalizing too much. There was a lot more going on in your life. You had other goals. And so when you can't be as passionate about it and enthusiastic about it, you're not able to put in that kind of work anymore. while Terence remains enthusiastic and passionate about boxing. Is that what you're saying? Is that why he's able to
Exactly. And I noted this before.
all comes full circle. See, we got the explanation.
He's got a number of young guys around him. They keep him young in the sport. They keep him excited. And then when it's time for him to handle the business, it's like, this is what I do. You know, that's why I'm a big fan of Terence Crawford, because I know him outside of fight night, and I know that who he is on fight night, that's who he is every day. And that's something that's really hard to contend with.
Well, momentum is a real thing. On to our next fight, someone with a ton of momentum, Pitbull Cruz. Pitbull mania, is it real, and can he keep it going? Right after this. For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel. Oh, Pitbull Cruz has momentum on his side. Well, remember, the March 30th fight, Rolly Romero, unbelievable performance. It's probably one of the most popular fighters, if not the most popular Mexican fighter right now in the United States. But that can all change August 3rd when he takes on Jose Valenzuela. Gentlemen, your thoughts on not just the fight itself, tactically, what we're talking about, but Chris, when you talk about momentum, someone seems to have everybody on the side right now, you know how quickly that can go away. What are your thoughts on that? The risk in this fight. It's a hard puncher.
Yeah, no, Jose Valenzuela is no joke. Like, this is a real matchup. It's a fight that it's going to be a shootout because Valenzuela likes to fight. If you think back a few fights ago, he fought Edwin de los Santos, that super dangerous guy, right? That super dangerous guy that fought Shakur Stevenson. Guess what? Valenzuela dropped that guy once, twice, hurt him a couple times. It was a shootout back and forth. Ended up getting stopped, but wanted the rematch, but then stepped off the rematch to get this fight. So Valenzuela knows what's on the line here. He's fighting a super popular guy on a really, really big card where there's going to be a lot of eyes. So this is a huge opportunity for Valenzuela to steal the shine that Isaac Cruz has walked into.
When you look at this shootout, fight of the night, it seems always like the co-main event, especially when we have our Wednesday night fight, seems to be the one that gets all the attention possibility in this fight for fight of the night.
Yeah, I think so. And I want to just more piggyback on what the champ Chris was talking about with Valenzuela. You know, he also had the controversial loss to Colbert and then came back and got the knockout win. So he's got a lot of momentum behind him as well. You talk about the De Los Santos fight. Valenzuela, if you look at him, he's a fan-friendly guy who makes a lot of fun fights, can hurt guys, can be hurt. When we talk about that BS that we say where the media and the fans like to try to talk about, the wins and losses don't count, just give people a good fight. Well, this guy's an example of why wins and losses matter. Because if it was about wins and losses don't matter and it was about making great fights and being exciting, well, this guy would be in demand constantly in main events. He's not in main events, is he? Well, because he takes L's sometimes. He'll entertain you. He'll get a win, though. He's good enough to get the wins. He causes some upsets. I don't know if he's going to be able to beat Pitbull here. He's got his opportunity to win a world championship. Pitbull is more compact. He's a little tighter. I could see this being a real shootout with Valenzuela winding up on his back. But then, hey, man, wins and losses don't matter, so we should bring Valenzuela back. Or do they matter?
You certainly hope. Showtime, what's your thought on that when it comes to a shootout, but and there may be a small tactical difference between the two fighters that makes makes it a little bit beyond that, right? When you have two guys who are hard punchers, a lot of times the little differences really matter. What's the little difference to you in this fight?
The little difference is Venezuela not getting hit. I think that Pitbull does pack a punch, maybe not quite as heavy at 140, but between the punch output as well as the quality of each punch, I mean, he's throwing hard with every single punch that he's got. Pitbull, that is, I think is up for Valenzuela. If I was coaching him, I would tell Valenzuela to take those small step back and be ready to counter. We know that that Pitbull is going to be out of position with every single punch that he throws because he's winging everything. Small step back, counter, and then turn. The thing that Pitbull cannot do is move his feet. That's his Achilles heel. He's great up top, likes to move his head, can throw big punches, but he has a hard time being able to move and get close to you. You know what I mean? So this is probably one of those fights that Valenzuela should try to make boring until he finds a great position and then take advantage of that position. But like those guys just said, man, I see the firefight. I see this being a shootout. And I don't think both guys. I don't think this is a decision fight. This is going to be a knockout win for one of those guys.
Valenzuela doesn't make boring fights. I don't think he even knows how to. To tell you the truth, I think if there are guys that should make fights boring, but they don't, it's not because I notice a lot of these kind of fighters will say, I could do that, but I don't do. No, you probably can't do that. That's probably the only way you know how to fight. Which is nobody's going to complain, and people are going to love that. But then, Valenzuela, I'm going to go back on the point I just made, doesn't get the main events, doesn't get the hugest fights, gets the opportunities, and he's got one again. We'll win some, we'll lose some. But now you understand where you want to complain, but you want to understand why Shakur Stevenson fights the way he fights. Because if Shakur Stevenson fought like this, would he be making the money he's making? Would he be in the main events? All this stuff. Now, winning still matters at the bottom line. I mean, even if we don't like to admit it, even if you want to pretend the narrative is a little different and saying, oh, no, you just got to be exciting. Well, if you're exciting and you lose, you don't get the big fights.
Chris, what's your thought on that? That risk versus reward of a fight like this, once again, both guys have a lot of momentum, but they have a very tough guy in front of them. Somebody's got to take the L. What's your thought of that? The risk involved in fights like this?
It depends at what point of your career it happens. If you've already been a world champion and then you turn into an exciting guy and you get some losses, okay, we'll deal with it. If you're Oscar De La Hoya and you are the golden boy and you have this brilliant beginning of your career, Oscar didn't need to win at the end. He lost as many as he won during the last couple fights of his career, but people still tuned in. He still made money, still made the opportunities. So it depends when it happened. Valenzuela lost too early in his career. He didn't get to that point where he was going to be forgiven for losses.
But the losses are still against good fighters.
They're excellent fighters, and they were good fights and good performances. But he didn't get to that level where he's going to get the pass. You made me think of a conversation I had with Robert Garcia when we were in the gym one day. Brandon Rios was saying Floyd Mayweather was boring. The way he fights is boring. And Robert Garcia said something so poignant, and he does this a lot. He's a very, very smart trainer. He goes, listen, he's like, if you guys could fight like him, you would.
Yeah,
you
I
can't.
always say that too.
So, you can't. So this is why these guys fight the way they fight. Because if you could fight and not get hit, if you could fight like Shakur, guess what? You would. Because you don't get hit, and you get the win.
And your career lasts 20 years
you get the win.
because you're just not getting in wars.
Yeah, so, if you could fight like him, you would. But, you can't. So you fight the way you can, and sometimes it's more exciting for us.
And honestly, this is my favorite fight on the card. Having said all that, now I
like both guys
I
a
like
lot.
Valenzuela. I like Pitbull. I think this is the shootout of the card. But I think Valenzuela probably winds up on his back at the end of it.
Well, another fight where someone might end up on their back. That's right, the heavyweights, including a redemption fight for Andy Ruiz. Do we believe him, or are fighters liars? When we come back. Don't miss evenly matched, high-action fights. Wednesday night fights on ProBox TV. Scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play.
I just don't want to let my family and my fans down. I know I haven't fought in 2 years, but this time I'm sticking to the mission, I'm sticking to the program, and I'm not exiting on the highways that I used to do. So I know exactly what I need to do, and I know exactly what I don't need to do. So I'm just really, really happy and blessed to have the right people around me, and I just thank God so much for giving me another opportunity, and we're gonna win, man. We're gonna win, and we're gonna become champions again, and we're gonna make Mexico proud.
Well, heavyweights are always interesting. That doesn't change August 3rd. Andy Ruiz Jr. versus Jarrell Big Baby Miller. The question with this fight is the dedication of both athletes. Look, we got an interview, exclusive one, with Andy Ruiz Jr. It seems as though he seems back on track. Had a gym built on his ranch where he doesn't have to go anywhere to eat, things like that. But when it comes to dedication, I'm going to throw everyone at this table, and including Showtime, who's joining us via Zoom, under the bus. Fighters are liars. We'll say whatever it is to make people think we're back on track. Showtime, I got to throw it to you. How much do you believe that I'm back on track? I'm really taking it seriously. Everything's good to go. When you know that's what fighters know. They know they need to say that. Showtime, what are your thoughts on it, man?
And especially because I've heard that from Jarrell Miller as well, but especially for Andy Ruiz, a fight. I think he's been out of the ring for close to 3 years now. And when you've been out of the ring that long, it's really hard to fathom you being dedicated to this sport and taking it seriously. You've had so much time to have moments where you just live life as a human being. And when you're a fighter, when you're at the top of this thing, you are not a human being. You can't be a human being. And what we do, and you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but we try to avoid being a human as much as possible. And usually that involves getting in the ring, keeping us stimulated by the actual fight night. He hasn't been stimulated. It's really hard for me to believe he's rededicated himself and has been extremely focused for a long time. He may even just be talking about the last 6 to 8 weeks, couple months since his fight's been announced. If he's been focused for that long, I think that's enough for him to get past Jarrell Miller. And I hope to see a better Andy Ruiz in the ring than we've seen in some time.
Paulie, for fighters and fans of a certain age, us here included, we all remember Riddick Bowe, who would go up and down in weight, his dedication question. He squandered all of that physical talent because he's always having to get back in shape all the time. Rededicating yourself takes a lot out of you physically. What are your thoughts on that? That up and down lack of dedication, it erodes the skills. Could we see that in Ruiz?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I mean, I never saw fat heavyweight champions until this generation. I mean, Bo was overweight. He wasn't fat.
Yeah, in his prime, he looked good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even after his prime, he wasn't fat. He was overweight. Like, like you've seen guys, Andy Ruiz won the heavyweight title with a gut.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, with a butterbean gut. It's different. And I'm not even knocking Andy, because I saw Andy when I was training at Wildcard in like 2010, 2011. He was a badass even back then. So I remember people telling me back then, he's had a lot of amateur fights. You watch him, he's good. I don't get me wrong, I didn't pin him as a future heavyweight champion, but I was like, for a fat guy, that kick a fight. That was sort of, But I saw him more like, and the old timers may remember this, I saw him more like Frankie Swindell more than Riddick Bowe. Yeah. Frankie Swindell was a chubby guy who would make you look bad, and had some, was a
deceptively
bit of a
athletic.
Yeah, was a bit of a journeyman. I didn't see him as Riddick Bowe, like a guy who was going to win the heavyweight title. Sure enough, he did, and it's funny because I think this fight, these guys' careers have had to eventually cross paths. They were both the fat heavyweight contenders. Right. One won the title, then the other one actually won the title because he replaced the other fat guy who was the opponent who was gonna fight Joshua the other time, right? So right. I mean, we allowed to fat shame me. I don't.
Well, it's a fight show. You can do it.
I'm not fat shaming. It's a family oriented.
We're fighter fat shaming, which is fine.
I'm like remember the Mad Rapper when he was on the talk show and on the Biggie Smalls albums? There's a family oriented show, So this is a family oriented show. I'm not
there you go. We can do it.
But nonetheless. Andy can fight. I mean, I'm beating around the bush with the whole point. The point is Andy can fight. Now, as far as dedication is concerned, it's hard to stay dedicated for 2 years. But through my contacts in boxing and all this stuff, I know in the past 2 years he's been offered fights. He's been offered fights and he's turned down fights. Maybe because he wanted to stay loyal to the PBC brand. I don't know, because this fight is obviously not.
There's been a lot of out-of-the-ring issues as well that came out via Twitter and his I don't know.
Well, that doesn't help either.
Yeah.
But because in the end, he's not really fighting on PBC here, right? It's not a PBC show.
No.
This is a Riyadh season.
Yep.
And Jarrell, this is like a soap opera here because this fight itself is so much drama. There could be
They have history. There
could be a TMZ episode just on this fight, and you could make like a 24/7 out of it, or whatever they used to call those.
Regardless of all that, though, I like this fight. We got two guys. There's gonna be over 500 pounds of man in this ring. You understand
Could
that?
be close to 6.
Because Jarrell is over 300. Yep. I think his last fight he was 330.
Andy's a lot skinnier.
330.
Come on, give the guy some credit.
Okay, but still,
did look cleaner when
you got a guy who's around 330.
Right.
And then you got Andy, is he going to come in shape at 270? All right, we got 600 pounds then. We got 600 pounds of man in the ring, and they can fight. Jarrell used to throw a ton of punches, but he can fight. The fight that he lost to Dubois, which in hindsight doesn't look as bad because Dubois has been on a run. He's been on a streak.
Joshua fight.
Yeah, and he's about to fight Joshua. So that's a big step there, and that's Jarrell's only loss. So now he's going to fight Andy Ruiz.
Lost weight, no? I feel like they're both lighter.
I don't know. I haven't seen Jarrell as of late. I don't know. You never know what Jarrell's going to weigh.
Ruiz did look a little leaner in that interview.
He did. But he's still going to be. He's not going to be under 250.
Right.
I don't think he's ever been under 250.
Yeah.
So you got two really big guys, and to your point, Chan, Andy Ruiz can really fight. He has got fast hands, big power. He's durable, super durable. When Jarrell fell out to fight Anthony Joshua, I actually fought on the undercard. I remember being in Las Vegas, and I was getting interviewed. We were doing some media stuff for the fight coming up, and I was being interviewed about Andy Ruiz stepping in for Jarrell Miller, and I was like, honestly, I think that's a more dangerous fight for Joshua. And the interviewer looked at me like I was out of my mind. I said, nah, it's just the way he is. He's short enough, durable enough to get inside, and he has very fast hands and he can really punch. I think that style will give Joshua more trouble than Jarrell. Sure enough, we all know how that history went. But Andy can really fight. This is going to be a very interesting fight.
Showtime, what I'm curious about you, when you look at the nutrition, when you look at, as you said, perhaps a lack of dedication, when in a fight does that rear its head? What round are you going to go, we're going to know by then if either one of these guys isn't dedicated or wasn't dedicated leading up?
It depends. The number one thing is the mental aspect of the fight. When you haven't been in the ring in a long time, there's no telling where a punch is thrown, or your heart rate goes to a certain level that it hasn't been in a long time. You hear noise from the crowd. There's a lot of different components that all come in. And while everybody wants to look at the physical, the one thing I would encourage everybody to look at is the mental. I think they're both going to be mentally strong. If anything were to happen, I don't know. It's a round by round kind of situation, because as tuned in as you can be, it only takes a moment for you to mentally break, and it only takes a moment for you to mentally come right back. The thing about Andy Ruiz that we know, he'll get clocked, he'll be hurt, he'll throw a punch, and because he's got power, he'll catch you, and all of a sudden he's right back where he wants to be.
But Sean, that was before he made $10 million. Is that still the
It's
same
true.
guy? Is that so?
It's
Jarrell,
true.
I feel like even
Well-
though Jarrell has one loss, he's really got his back against the ropes in terms of his career. Andy doesn't, man. Andy's got a ranch now. He can afford
his
it.
last
He's a
fight
different
against
mindset.
He's got chefs.
his last fight against Chris Areola, though, that was his
Yeah.
last fight,
Yep.
and there were moments where he got clocked by Areola and he came
got
right
dropped,
back.
yeah.
you
He got
know?
dropped.
That was also like those La Raza versus La Raza fights. There's a little more pride there.
Yeah.
I don't.
But also, he was like, I cannot lose to this guy. I should not be losing to this guy. I can't lose to this guy.
Well, that's like a neighborhood slugfest. Like you can't go back to the neighborhood after you lose that fight. I was like when I fought Zeb, I couldn't lose that fight. Otherwise, I couldn't go back to Brooklyn.
Exactly, you can. Whenever you have two tough Mexican fighters, something comes out of both men. We'll see if that comes out August 3rd, of course, from Andy Ruiz Jr. But a couple of undefeated fighters on the undercard, at the beginning of the card, that are very, very interesting for different reasons when we come back. For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel. Welcome back into the Big Fight Breakdown. That's right, August 3rd. A lot of fighters with a ton of big names in their past moving forward, but a couple fighters who may have big names in their future. That's right, we have Jared Anderson, 17-0, 15 knockouts, and Andy Cruz, outstanding amateur, only his 4th professional fight come August 3rd, but great things expected from him. Let's start with Jared Anderson. Legit or not, at 17-0, 15 knockouts. This is a guy, Turki Alalshikh, 24 years old, is Anderson. Very bullish on, thinks he has a great future. Do you agree, Paulie?
There was a time I agreed. I am more questioning it now. Still undefeated, still has a lot of upside. I'm not off the Jared Anderson train. I'm just not as quickly on it either. I have a lot more questions. While before there were less questions, and I was thinking it was a matter of when this guy was going to kind of step in and inherit the heavyweight division. Now I'm still at an if. But he'll be a part of the heavyweight picture. I just don't know if he's going to actually inherit heavyweight supremacy. That's where I sort of question it.
All right, this Paulie fight, all right, we talked about his opponent. When you heard the name, Chris, little raising the eyebrows. Literally just like this. Tell me why this opponent might be a little too much too soon.
It's a very tough fight. Yeah. Martin Paulie is no joke. Do look at his record. It's 20-1, sorry, with 15 KOs. His one loss was to, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank. Mike Hunter, excuse me. Who was very, very
Bounty
good.
Hunter.
Yeah, Mike the Bounty Hunter. And I believe he got injured toward the end of the fight, and that's why he was actually stopped. I think it was like a shoulder injury or something like that. But Mike Hunter is a very capable heavyweight. So his only loss is to Mike Hunter. But he's got power. He's been in with some tough guys. He's gotten better. He's improved since that loss. He's durable, big, strong. He's got a lot of things that can give Jared issues if Jared isn't the truth, the way that we all think he is. I think I was just like you, Chad. I was very, very high on Jared. I'm probably still high on him, more so than you are. The out of the ring stuff gives you some issues. Last couple performances give me some issues. But I think in terms of talent, I mean, he's up here. But Paulie's the kind of guy that's going to test you in every way. And again, if he's not the truth, we're going to find out.
Crossroads fight. Showtime for both guys, where the winner probably, as Paulie said, maybe the next big thing in the heavyweight division. Could this be the dividing fight for them?
I think this is more than likely going to be the crossover fight for Jared Anderson, where he goes from being that contender to, all right, what belt is he going to fight for, and when is he going to fight for it? I've always felt like he's maybe a fight or two away. This whole situation going on with Prince Turki Alalshikh, moving these guys, getting the fights that he wants. I have no doubt that if Jared Anderson is successful, Prince Alalshikh is going to want to put him in a position to see him get a belt crowned to him in Saudi. That being said, I do expect him to win this fight. I've been on that train a lot like everyone else. Him being from my neighborhood back in Ohio, I've always been aware of who he was, and his assets, his abilities. But I would say, last thing I'm going to say, probably the theme for me today is just the mental side of boxing. I think he exemplifies that very well, where you could have it all, physically, but if you don't have it all mentally, you will waver. Things may not go exactly according to plan. You may get hit a little more than expected. List goes on. You may just not want to fight for a championship title because this is mentally not the space that you want to be in. So I try to ignore that whole the rumblings about him not being all there mentally, not wanting to be a champion, all those kinds of. I try to ignore it, but it's such a big part of the fight game. And for me, some fighters, they determine whether or not they're going to be a champion. I've always felt that way about Jared. It's up to him whether or not he wants to be a champion, and it starts on fight night.
Well, speaking of champions, certainly in the amateurs, Andy Cruz, we look at him, 2 Pan American medals, 3 world titles, and 1 Olympic gold medal. The guy has the resume, but 3-0 heading into this fight August 3rd. Reminds you of this Ukrainian guy? I'm trying to think of his name. Yeah, Lomachenko. Do you get those kind of vibes about the early start from a decorated amateur, Paulie?
I kind of do, but the lightweight division is much more deep than the featherweight division was for Lomachenko when he turned pro and won a featherweight title very early in his career. So I think it's not going to be quite as quick. Obviously, he's already not as quick as he is 3-0. By this point in his career, Lomachenko was a world champion. But I also don't, as high as I am on Cruz and as excited as I am, because he's actually a fun fighter to watch besides being good, I also don't want to put the cart before the horse strictly because he's a lightweight. And this is a difficult weight class. But you know what? Watching him join the fray soon, get in the room with all the big boys in that weight class, it'll be a fun time. I mean, you can think about it. This is a weight class that boasts a lot of good fighters. You have the fading Lomachenko, but you also have Gervonta Davis, Shakur Stevenson, young guys like Keyshawn Davis, Morataya we talked about. You got guys who are kind of faded out, like Kambosos, who may wind up becoming an opponent for a guy like,
at least, right?
For Cruz, I could see Cruz taking on Kambosos if he looks good at this fight, maybe in the next fight or two. That's already an ex-world champion on your resume. I look forward to watching the growth, and he excites me as a fighter, and I am high on him. I'm bullish on him, but it's not an easy weight class.
Antonio Moran, 37 pro fights. That's his opponent. That is, however you slice it, Deepwaters, that's a veteran guy. Chris, what do you want to see out of a guy?
Had him on ProBox.
I was going to say, speaking of
ProBox veteran, yeah.
He's the winningest fighter on ProBox TV air. Winningest fighter in our air. He won the Last Chance tournament. We brought him back. He won.
And he's been in with good fighters.
Been in with very good fighters. He is a very good fighter himself. This is a test for Andy Cruz. But man, I'm so high on this guy. I'm so high on Andy Cruz. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. And the way that he's been able to transition from the amateurs to the pros, the situational awareness that he shows in the pro game is so far beyond where he should be at this point with 3 fights. He's taken to the pros excellently. He's got a great body type for it. And he's not a puncher, so he's getting rounds. Like, he's 3-0. He's got 1 KO. You expect these guys with all this amateur background to come out and have all the KOs. Lomachenko did. He scored a lot of knockouts, especially at the lighter weight classes. And he's not that kind of guy. He's a technician, but he's getting a lot of rounds under his belt. He is a phenomenal fighter.
Beats you up, too.
Beats you up. He's physical. Even though he's not a puncher, you don't need to be a puncher to beat a guy up. He beats guys up. Again, as a technician, as a judge of distance, he fights with confidence as well, even in the pro games. I'm very, very high on Andy Cruz. And this fight, specifically against Antonio Moran, who we know so much about, I think is going to show all of his colors, everything that he's got. I'm looking forward to this fight as well. It's a great matchup.
We're just talking about crossroads fights and moving on to that next level. Cruz, if he looks impressive here, Showtime, is it a next level kind of thing? Much like Lomachenko, where he's in world title conversations already.
Yeah, there's no secret. Eddie Hearn has been very, very clear about that. He's on the fast track. We're trying to get him to a title as soon as possible. The thing I do know about Eddie is he's going to try to be strategical. You know who the big boys are up there at 135. They'll try to be strategical and put them in position. But I could see it happening, if not after this fight right here, the very next one.
Well, who, man? Those lightweight titles aren't being given away. All the champions are tough, man. It's not like you don't have a soft touch anymore at lightweight.
But I think there's Keyshawn Davis and him have a history together from the amateurs. They've been talking a lot. There's a lot of
opposing promoters. Do they both want to risk that asset? Does Top Rank want to risk Keyshawn? Does Eddie want to risk Cruz against one another that early before either of them have ever won a world title?
Andy's a guy, and this is
you talked about before. It matters before you win a world title.
It does. But certain guys, like a guy like Keyshawn, if he were to catch a loss, he's still going to get an opportunity to get to where he is because of his amateur background. He's already deep into his career, regardless of whether he has a lot of pro fights or not. But Andy Cruz is the kind of guy I personally think right now he could probably beat everybody other than the tip-top guys.
Well,
at
we'll
30
see.
pounds. I'm really high on it.
He's a high-action guy, and there's a lot of action in this lightweight division. I mean, it's a fun division, and he's just another great addition to this division. For me, the action is the juice.
Always have the heat references on the Big Fight Breakdown. Enjoy the fights, and we'll see you after.